Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. The moment I stepped outside, I handed every last berry to the barefoot children who ran about the city. Gradually, things improved. A new school was built. Abandoned fields were reclaimed and cultivated. Physician Bai accepted 2 children as his apprentices. They were cleverer than I, yet I still often went to the infirmary to sort herbs. I spoke more than before. If I encountered ruffians, I would imitate Funi's bold temperament, brandishing a broom to chase them off, or scolding them outright. At first I was clumsy. I had been born quiet and had learned rigid decorum in the Marquis household. I did not know how to explode in anger. But once I clenched my teeth and began to, I discovered the knack of it. With time, I grew skilled. The soldiers who came for bandaging still found it amusing. The moment they saw me, they would begin again. Beaten today? They would even say I scolded people in the streets like a yiksha demon. I could not endure their teasing any longer and went to complain to Physician Bai. I am now a titled female official of the princess's residence, I said. My name is recorded on the rolls, and I receive a proper stipend. If you strike me, you will be punished. Besides, Her Highness has never laid a hand on me. On what grounds do you beat me? Physician Bai let out a cold laugh. The ruler in his hand sliced sharply through the air. Though old, his voice rang louder than the soldiers. I am beating you on behalf of Her Highness. He was advanced in years, his mind still keen, though his limbs were no longer quick. At such moments, I would seize the chance to run, darting through several streets to buy dried fruits. I peeled most of them to cook porridge for the princess and swallowed the rest myself. Before long, I became something of a legend at Yanshan Pass. Mothers who could not manage their children would whisper threats at night to those who refused to sleep. If you don't close your eyes, I'll send you to Physician Bai as an apprentice. You'll be beaten like Aman. And so, in the dark of night, Physician Bai, whose appearance was naturally benevolent, turned into a child-beating demon who forced bitter medicine down small throats and pierced them with needles. Before that, the demon in bedtime tales had been General Su, the commander who guarded this place. Life on the frontier was poor, yet compared to the years of marching with the army, it was more peaceful. But such days did not last. On a windy afternoon as I walked through the city, I heard the rumble of carriage wheels. I heard the name of the new Ran carried on the wind. I heard curses. I heard distant crying. Soon after, I followed Princess Seraphina Vale to live permanently within the military camp. Physician Bai packed his belongings and returned to the army as well. He had always been Her Highness's personal physician. Because his medical skills were exceptional, he oversaw all military doctors, and even those serving under him were his apprentices. By nature, he belonged in the camp, not outside it. Only after the princess had stabilized matters would he visit the infirmary in town each month to treat patients, take in apprentices, and instruct local physicians. Now that the war had grown tense, he naturally remained stationed within the camp. The frontier still appeared calm. At times, the new Ran would ride beneath the city walls to provoke us. The princess remained unmoved. They did not initiate a full assault either. She never brought me up onto the battlements. I could not see the true situation, nor did I understand it. And so I did not trouble myself over such matters. I continued with my tasks, making beds, pouring tea. Only occasionally, when I saw soldiers returning from drills, their faces drawn with fatigue, their limbs taut and trembling, did I sense a thread of unease. I remembered something Nurse Chu had once said to me. When the wind rises, a storm is coming. Time passed heavily. The new Ran began probing attacks against Yanshan Pass. Princess Seraphina Vale resolved them with ease. Praise filled the camp after each skirmish, yet she was not pleased. In earlier days, victory would make her radiant. She would host feasts, celebrate with laughter. Now her expression was calm, her brows perpetually knit. The army's provisions dwindled. The lamps in her tent burned later into the night. I joined the cooks and soldiers in digging for wild greens. The frontier bore little fruit or vegetable harvest. Even the army had to rely on wild plants. The men did not recognize as many edible varieties as I did and often overlooked what could be eaten. We boiled wild greens with grain and made soup from hunted game. Yet even if the frontier had been abundant, it could not have sustained so many mouths. And in truth, it was not abundant. Food stores diminished day by day. Gradually, daily rations shrank. Some soldiers collapsed from hunger at the training grounds. Though I did not know where the princess managed to procure additional grain, it could not last forever. Even her own portion grew smaller. She was the commanding general, the daughter of General Marcus Vale, noble by birth. She need not have gone hungry, but she said, "We are all human. We all stand here on the frontier against the new Ran. No one is more exalted than another. My rations shall be the same as the soldiers. Whatever they eat, I eat. If they go hungry, I go hungry." Tea had long since run out. Each day she drank plain water, working deep into the night, her brows locked in thought. My anxiety deepened. I racked my mind for solutions. I might fill the princess's stomach alone, but how could I feed an entire army? So many mouths. From where could she obtain grain enough to sustain them all? Why had the supply convoy not yet arrived? As I was praying fervently to every god and Buddha I knew, a rope suddenly tightened around me. I was bound and taken to the tent of General Su. General Su had ties to the Meng family. When His Majesty had still been a general of the previous dynasty, fighting at the frontier, General Su had served under him. Back at the Marquis household, I once overheard the Marquis jest with the princess that Su held her in special regard. Later, at the frontier, he earned such a fierce reputation that children cried at night upon hearing his name. I was merely a maid in attendance upon the princess. He was a general guarding an entire region. Why seize me? General Su was studying a map. After a long while, he ordered the ropes removed and personally helped me to my feet. "Aman," he said. "My apologies." His tone was courteous, but it was only a facade. If not, why had he brought me here bound? He did not waste words. Producing a porcelain vial, he said calmly, "Aman, I require you to mix this into Her Highness's food. Tomorrow night, I will arrange for men to escort Her Highness away." I refused at once. "General, such actions are improper. Forgive this servant, I dare not comply." General Su replied evenly, "There is no need to refuse so hastily. You are a loyal servant. Hear me out." He paused. "Our provisions are exhausted. It is only a matter of time before Yanshan Pass falls to the enemy. I am its defending general. Naturally, I must live or die with it. But Her Highness is a rare genius of our age. She need not be buried here with me." A cold smile curved General Su's lips. "Aman," he said, "if you are truly a loyal servant, then you should do this for Her Highness." I was not shaken by the implication in his words. Instead, I asked, "If that is so, then why does the general wish to preserve Her Highness's life rather than his own?" He fell silent. After a long moment, he sighed, "I have no other choice. Her Highness is His Majesty's eldest daughter, dearly beloved. Who would dare withhold provisions meant for her?" My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. General Su continued, "When His Majesty was still a marquis, I devoted myself wholeheartedly, hoping only to earn his regard. Now I guard such a vital pass. Yet the one sent to assist me is his cherished daughter. Even so, the grain has been withheld." He looked at me. "Aman, try to guess, who stands behind this?" Seeing that I did not answer, he lowered his voice. "Her Highness, Au, is not one to submit for long. Now the frontier is in crisis. If this is not by His Majesty's command, then it is by the Crown Prince's. And even if not by direct order, they certainly know, and choose to ignore it." He paused. "If I survive this by chance, I will only fall under suspicion. I will not have a good end. But Au is different. If she survives, she will surely contend for power with her father and brothers. I dare say, she will win." He exhaled slowly. "My death is nothing. I ask only that she remember that today I saved her life. That she preserve my family. That she one day cleanse the humiliation inflicted by the new Ran." I bowed deeply to him, not for the princess, but for the general who guarded Yanshan Pass. He asked, "Can you help me?" I answered, "I cannot." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "I am a loyal servant," I said. "I cannot overstep my station. What the general asks of me is treachery. I cannot commit it." General Su's voice sharpened. "Are you not afraid Her Highness will die here?" I asked in return, "If Her Highness abandons the city and flees, will she truly escape disaster?" He replied, "In the Golden Hall sit her father and her brothers." I asked, "Then why have the provisions not arrived?" He fell silent. I continued, "If Her Highness leaves the city as you propose, and if, as you predict, she truly ascends to the highest throne, wipes away disgrace, and establishes great merit, how will history judge her?" I lifted my gaze to him. "When future historians record her deeds, will they go to the princess's residence and ask, 'Did you flee of your own will, or were you drugged and carried away unconscious?' Even now, though Her Highness has accomplished so much, her reputation is not unblemished. If she truly does this, then even if she later annihilates the new Ran, people will still speak only of the day she abandoned the city and ran. If Her Highness harbors great ambition, this single act will sever her future entirely." What I could think of, General Su surely had already considered. That he now resorted to such a desperate measure meant he had reached the end of the road. He had no choice left but to place all hope upon my princess. Even if he barely preserved her life, it would be nearly impossible for her to rise again afterward. At last, General Su turned his back to me and spoke no further. I could only bow and withdraw from the tent. The night was black as ink. There was no moon, but the sky was filled with stars, brilliant above Yanshan Pass. I was born in Yuezhou and grew up there. I had seen clear blue skies before, but never so many stars, crowded together as if they might tumble down to earth. I gazed at them, tears nearly falling. Just now, inside the tent, I had almost agreed to General Su, but I could not. I did not know, to my princess, whether life or integrity mattered more. I was willing to follow her to death. I was willing to die in her stead, but I did not want her to die. I wished her a long life of 100 years. I wished her wealth and glory. I wished her freedom from suffering, peace all her days. Yet life does not unfold according to one's wishes. Just as I once wished not to starve, not to be beaten, not to be married off carelessly, only to muddle through each day in confusion. But my parents did not heed my prayers, nor lessen my suffering. I knelt upon the ground, I pressed my palms into the earth, burned incense, and bowed devoutly to the gods above. Whether of Buddha, Tao, or any immortal spirit, please grant my princess a path to live. I vow to remain alone all my life, without husband, without descendants, only spare her. Let her preserve her life and return safely. Perhaps my prayers were answered, or perhaps my princess simply possessed a fortunate destiny. After 5 days of waiting, at last we saw them, carriages, grain, and young Master Mei. Young Master Mei, Mei Jifeng, was the son of the princess's former tutor. When Her Highness had come and gone from the residence in earlier years, I had seen him in passing. Now, seeing him again, he was sturdier, darker, sun-browned and strong. He had left home to conduct trade. On his return to the capital, he noticed that the transport of grain was suspiciously delayed. Realizing something was amiss, he liquidated his entire fortune, purchased provisions himself, and delivered them to Yanshan Pass, saving the princess's life. What is meant by finding life at the edge of death? This was it. Idiom explanation. Finding life at the edge of death describes a situation in which someone, trapped in dire peril and seemingly without hope, unexpectedly discovers a path to survival. In this story, it refers to young Master Mei's timely arrival with provisions, rescuing the princess and the army from imminent disaster. I was so overjoyed that I could not even cry. I only knew to run and fetch the grain to cook. I wanted to prepare as much nourishing food as possible, to strengthen the princess's body, to fortify her well, so she would have the strength to defeat the new Ran. I was too excited. Even my cooking lost all sense of proportion. When the dishes were finally laid out, Princess Seraphina Vale and young Master Mei sat down together. Yet after each took only a few bites, they set their chopsticks down. The princess sighed, "Aman, I do not care for pickled vegetables." In the end, not a single dish was wasted. All who had once endured hunger could not bear extravagance now that grain had arrived. Moreover, vegetables were scarce to begin with. Even if my cooking was poor, the princess would not discard it. She and several stubborn guards forced themselves to finish every last bite. Young Master Mei was already dark from travel. After eating my food, his face seemed even darker. Yet with the soldiers present, stern and upright, he endured it with dignity. "I earned such a fortune through trade," he said. "In my household alone, I kept 4 chefs. And now I suffer like this here, Your Highness. I do not conduct business at a loss." Without lifting her head, the princess replied, "Wait until I destroy the new Ran and open the route to the western regions. Your merchant caravan may travel there freely. Your taxes shall be one portion lower than others. If your caravan is robbed in the western regions, Yanshan Pass will stand behind you." Young Master Mei's joy was boundless. As if to show his resolve, he picked up his chopsticks and competed for my dishes. But the food I had cooked did not become tastier simply because the princess promised him a trade route. He grimaced at the saltiness, yet stubbornly stuffed flatbread into his mouth, choking until tears streamed down his face. The princess was a woman favored by fate. After provisions arrived and the army rested and regrouped, she led them into battle, and won a great victory. When she departed the city, she forbade me to follow. I could only remain in her quarters, keeping water hot and food prepared. Waiting for her return, day after day, news of victory came. The new Ran's grain stores were burned. The great consort of the new Ran Kagan was captured. The princess pursued their commander-in-chief. the entire city was swept with jubilation. Captured soldiers and nobles were escorted into the city. Their armor and silks were stripped away. They were locked into cages. When cages ran short, many were bound wrist to wrist with ropes, strung together in long lines, forced to march behind the carts, shouted at and cursed. The whole city poured into the streets, the old men who sold firewood and charcoal, widows who washed clothes for a living, farmers who tilled the fields, tavern keepers, greedy landlords, the virtuous and the vile, men and women, old and young, so many people, so many lives, yet all bore deep hatred toward the new Ran. In the past, when the Great Een had been weak, the new Ran had entered Yenshan Pass as if no one stood in their way, pillaging at will. Of those who survived those years, who did not carry blood debt against them, before the soldiers could even speak, the people hurled stones and broken bricks at the new Ran prisoners, wanting to smash them to death to vent their fury. Some, maddened with rage, even broke through the soldiers' lines to beat the captives with their own hands. In earlier years, when the new Ran were powerful, most young men in the city had joined the army. When numbers proved insufficient, even sturdy women were conscripted and trained as soldiers to go to the battlefield. Those left behind were the elderly, children, and frail women, yet even so, some among them still broke through the guards to strike their enemies. When soldiers pulled them away, one old man had already bitten off the ear of a new Ran captive. Cries echoed through the city. The soldiers looked at me expectantly. I was the princess's attendant and had assisted physician by entreating patients. I possessed some small measure of authority, my words carried weight, but I only stood there, silent. White-clad new Ran prisoners filled the streets, crying filled the streets, hatred filled the streets, rage filled the streets. The once arrogant new Ran, now their legs trembled, their heads bowed as they walked. Why were they afraid? Did they truly know fear? I suppressed the confusion in my heart. An elderly man had fainted from grief and weeping. I carried him on my back to the infirmary. Within the military camp, vigilance was less strict. Physician Bai was seated at the infirmary that day. It was the day new Ran prisoners entered the city. He did not go to watch the spectacle, and thus he could treat the old man. There were more than a dozen others inside, people who had fainted from overwhelming emotion, lying on beds or on the floor to recover. Physician Bai glanced at me. "Where has your spirit wandered off to?" "I am worried about Her Highness," I said. He comforted me. "Her Highness is such a person. She will surely turn misfortune into fortune and survive calamity. That old brute up there, normally his tongue spares no one, always sharp and cruel, rare indeed for him to say something decent." Yet it was precisely then that the princess was carried back in a wretched state. I had hoped Physician Bai would heal her swiftly. Instead, I could only carry red-rimmed eyes as I pounded herbs, decocted medicine, bandaged her wounds, prepared warm water, fanned her when needed. In stolen moments, I knelt and prayed again to every god I could name. I even began to regret, why had I not agreed to General Su? If young Master Mei had brought grain, then surely General Su could have held the city. The more I thought, the more my heart ached. The more I thought, the deeper my regret. I hated myself for clinging so rigidly to loyalty and righteousness, forgetting the princess's life. If I could do it over again, I would take General Su's veil without hesitation. I would bind the princess tightly, carry her back to the princess's residence in the capital. Let them punish me in her stead. Let me suffer exile for her. Only let her live. I went with her to confiscate the estates. I would stay behind to wash clothes and mend garments, to feed and care for her. Fortunately, my young lady was indeed someone favored by fate. Though she had been gravely wounded, she recovered. She was still weak, still unable to rise from bed. From time to time she coughed up blood. Yet her spirit grew stronger with each passing day. And so I began to smile again. I no longer shot secret glares at Physician Bai. I even went out to the streets now and then, listening to bits of amusing gossip, gathering a few light-hearted tales to recount to my lady when I returned. The nobles of New Ran who had been imprisoned were able to live in relative peace. Though they no longer enjoyed their former extravagance, they still had food to eat and clothes to wear. However loudly the common people shouted for their deaths, it was difficult for that fury to penetrate the prison walls. But the soldiers of New Ran were another matter. They bore the wrath of the entire city, especially those civilians who had once been captured and were now returning to reunite with their families. Their cries were even more heartrending. Those who had been taken were not brought to New Ran to live ordinary lives. They had been driven to herd livestock, to hunt, to clear wasteland, to mine. They were slaves. Beasts of burden. Winter rations. Living shields on New Ran's battlefields, they had been tormented beneath the whips of New Ran. Even when their cries echoed beyond Yenshan Pass, not a single shred of salvation had come. By the time Princess Seraphina Vale finally annihilated New Ran, fewer than 1 in 10 of them had survived. Hatred piled higher than mountains, deeper than seas. How could it possibly be forgotten so easily? When I stepped once more onto the streets, I saw that there were far more people than before. Some had lost parents, spouses, children. Their homes had been burned to the ground. The authorities had registered their names, waiting to allocate farmland to them. Some had lived in New Ran for so long that they had forgotten their own language. Under the cold gazes of those around them, they could only exist numbly. There were also children, born of unfortunate women in New Ran. Those children had been born as slaves. New Ran did not acknowledge them, yet they did not resemble the people of the Central Plains either. Some were brought back by their mothers, but more wandered the streets, stealing, snatching, begging. When acquaintances of mine mentioned them, they used words like mongrel and beast. Rarely had I been so silent. On the night before we were to return to the capital, I slept in my lady's chamber. Princess Seraphina lay on her bed, flipping through a book. She called my name twice before I came back to myself. I did as she asked and lit the lamp. "What troubles you?" she asked. I hesitated for a long time. At last, I voiced the question that had tormented me for days. Are the children of the barbarians truly deserving of death? They are not New Ran. Their mothers were women abducted and forced to bear them, only so they could be enslaved. They are not of the Central Plains either. They look different. They cannot even speak our tongue. They are not their fathers' children. Their fathers beat them, drove them to herd animals, pushed them onto battlefields to fill the gaps with their own flesh and blood. They are not their mothers' children either. Perhaps their mothers once protected them. But when those women finally returned home, the children were cast aside, reduced to the mongrels in other people's mouths. As I spoke, I thought, what kind of child was I? Whose daughter was I? My birth had brought shame to my parents. My upbringing had consumed their grain and their taxes. My resentment, did it prove that I was some ungrateful savage? My grandmother was old and muddled, yet there was no doubt she had been the cleverest person in our household. She had wanted my father to abandon me in the mountains, to spare me from surviving, from enduring years of wind, frost, rain, snow, and endless suffering. But there was no doubt either that I was the most useless one, yet I survived. Wolves did not devour me. Hard labor did not wear me down. Families who came to inspect me did not buy me away. I did not hang myself or throw myself into the river because of rumors and slander. I entered service at the manor. My mistress was the emperor's most beloved daughter, Princess Seraphina Vale. I escaped slavery and became a female official. Did I deserve it? Filth ran in my veins. I ate my parents' grain, yet resented them for not giving me a clean identity. For distinguishing me from my younger siblings, Princess Seraphina only looked at me and said, "Everyone has their own fate." She smiled lightly, but the one thing you must never believe in is fate. If I had believed in fate, I should have thrown myself into the river one night, letting my body be buried beside Xiao Qiao. If I had believed in fate, when I was questioned, I should have kept silent, gradually becoming despised, turning into a numb and indifferent servant. If I had believed in fate, when others humiliated me, I should have killed myself out of shame. She looked at me steadily, so I must never believe in fate. Just as Princess Seraphina had never believed in hers, she had been born the eldest daughter of a marquis household. Clever like her father, cherished and favored. The best destiny laid out for her would have been simple: learn embroidery, be filial and obedient, win a fine reputation, marry into a powerful family, bear sons and daughters. Honor her husband's parents, treat concubines kindly, and in old age become the most respected grand madam among the noble clans. That would have been the safest, most fortunate fate of all. But she had never believed in it. But my lady read books and understood great principles. She studied martial arts. She dressed in men's attire, loved to spar with her brothers, came and went from the training grounds, and led troops to wipe out bandits. When the imperial envoy arrived bearing the sacred decree demanding that she enter into a political marriage through self-sacrifice, she chose instead to follow her father and raise the banner of rebellion. I had never dared to believe that the Marquis would, for the sake of a daughter, become a traitor to the throne, though she was the daughter he cherished most, valued most. Even if she had endured the ultimate humiliation of that marriage, she would have been obeying the will of the court. But Princess Seraphina Vale seized that very moment as her opportunity. She gambled on what she had seen. She gambled on what she had guessed. She grasped even the faintest flicker of resolve within the Marquis. She saw the power her father had quietly accumulated. Her eyes shone like the sun itself. The imperial decree meant to drag her into the mire, to stain her name with disgrace, became instead the starting point of her ambition. From that moment on, she knew she would become a general, not a sheltered commandery lady, not a princess confined to silks and ceremonies. In this world, there is no logic that says one is born more noble than another. Nor is there any logic that says one is born already guilty. There are poor girls who refuse to abandon their husbands. When their husbands pass the examinations and become officials, they are granted titles in return. There are princesses sent away in political marriages for 15 years. Forced to wed one man after another, enduring humiliation beyond words. There are those born lowly who nevertheless enter the imperial palace. Princess Seraphina once said, "If you speak of nobility, the late emperor was supremely noble. Yet his crimes need no repetition. When the people mention him, who does not spit in contempt? And if you speak of low birth, who is more lowly than General Victor Rowan? My father, at least, descended from a declining noble house. But General Rowan was once a street performer, forced into the army. He strove desperately, and only after my father promoted him did he gain the path that led to his later achievements. Yet with such origins, he defended Yanshan Pass for 8 long years. His merit alone should shame countless noble families." Then she looked at me. "Ah man, tell me, who is born base? Who is born guilty?" I said nothing more, I was persuaded. Perhaps it was because her words leaned toward my own heart that I wanted to believe her. Perhaps she herself did not fully believe what she said and merely wished to comfort me. But I always felt that Princess Seraphina had read so many books, understood so many grand truths. What she said must be right. I should believe her. And even if I did not, I needed a reason to live in peace. Princess Seraphina ordered General Victor Rowan to gather those abandoned children. She intended to bring them to the capital, teach them the language of the Central Plains, dress them in its clothing, feed them its food. She wanted them to farm, to study, to hear the crack of a whip without trembling in terror, to sleep through the night without waking in fear. She said, "Those who could not go on living because of me, I want you to live." General Rowan muttered darkly that she was ruled by a woman's compassion, that such softness could never accomplish great things. Yet even as he scolded her, he quietly arranged everything she requested. A woman's compassion cannot achieve greatness. That phrase was often used to suggest that women, guided by emotion and mercy, were unfit for great achievements, especially those requiring hardness and resolve. It was an old prejudice, claiming that women were unsuited to bear heavy responsibilities. In truth, I never quite understood General Rowan. He seemed to value Princess Seraphina greatly, always discussing military affairs and grand strategy with her, and yet he also seemed not to value her at all. Whatever she asked of him, he responded with displeasure and sharp rebukes. Did he resent her for stealing his merit? But though she had won great victories, breaking the enemy's main camp and slaying New Rant's general, he had also severed the enemy's supply lines and restrained their forces. Moreover, he had defended Yenshan Pass for 8 years. In terms of merit and reward, he stood first. Was it because he had once served under the previous dynasty? Yet he was a former classmate of the current emperor, a comrade in arms of Princess Seraphina. Upon returning to the capital, he would hardly face suspicion or punishment. Did he desire a noble title and hereditary honors? That was no difficult matter. With such merit, he was certain to be ennobled. His wife would receive rank as well. Princess Seraphina herself grew irritated. She forbade me from obeying General Rowan's orders. Whenever he visited, she would instruct me to brew the poorest tea for him. General Rowan paid no attention to the tea. He would argue fiercely with her, accuse her again of being ruled by a woman's heart, smash several teacups, and storm out. Yet outside, he treated her with the utmost respect. He handled every matter thoroughly, and he even sent her a gift, a beautiful young man. The youth had been rescued from a bandit's lair. He was an entertainer who had fled from an opera troupe. His appearance was astonishingly lovely. Once he had cleaned himself and dressed in neat garments. He became breathtaking. Even Princess Seraphina was momentarily startled when she saw him. His name was Qingxi. Princess Seraphina ordered me to arrange matters for him as I pleased. Only he was not permitted to appear before her again. I tried every method but could not think how best to place him, so in the end I simply found him a room. Qingxi could play the pipa and sang beautifully. He smiled gently at everyone he met. Though Princess Seraphina refused to see him, everyone else found excuses to pass by, just to glimpse once the peerless beauty General Rowan had presented. The young maids whispered and pointed in secret. When Qingxi glanced their way, they flushed crimson. Even Crown Prince Lucian Ashford came specially to see him. Afterward, he instructed me that Qingxi was not to wander about freely. After Princess Seraphina Vale returned to the capital in triumph, she naturally received countless rewards. She was granted official rank and enfeoffed with lands. I remained her lady officer, serving at her side. By rights, she should have resided in her own princess's manor. It was the first princess's estate established in the dynasty, and the most magnificent among all the residences of princes and princesses. but the emperor cherished her dearly. He insisted she remain within the palace and even dispatched royal physician Malcolm Gray to take her pulse daily. After our return, life grew far livelier. The empress, the consorts, the princes and princesses, all sent gifts. Because it was inconvenient to store everything openly within the inner palace, the emperor ordered a separate treasury opened exclusively for Princess Seraphina to house her rewards and offerings. Crown Prince Lucian Ashford also came often to visit. He brought rare treasures. At times he even played chess with her, yet I did not like seeing him. In the old days at the Marquis's residence, the Crown Prince had treated Princess Seraphina better than anyone. If there were gifts, he always let her choose first. He bought her hairpins and bolts of silk, urging her to dress beautifully before going out. When she hunted fine game, she would always select the best portion for me to deliver to him. He would be delighted and inquire carefully after her health. After ascending to his position, he remained just as gentle as before. The fruits sent from the Eastern Palace were chosen with such care and refinement that even I, foolish as I am, could perceive his thoughtfulness. When he came to see her, she was often asleep upon her books. He would then question me about her condition. Every word he spoke carried concern, as though those bright old days had returned. He tried his utmost to treat her well. I kept my head lowered, not daring to meet his eyes, answering only in timid replies. He sighed once and said, "A servant like you, how can you properly attend to you?" I bowed and escorted him out. When I returned to the chamber, Princess Seraphina was already awake, reclining against the bed, reading. The room was quiet. I prepared hot tea for her. She never truly appreciated tea. She claimed she had a wooden tongue, unable to distinguish the fragrance of fine varieties such as Cloud Mist or Bai Luo Chun. She only wanted it brewed strong, so it would cut through her fatigue while she worked. The emperor was the same. In the days before he ascended the throne, he once said you resembled him in this. Now, among the common people, stories even circulated that both the emperor and the princess favored strong tea. It was once teased by a certain scholar as pearls before swine. I remembered those earlier days, when she and the crown prince studied together before his ascension. I would bring them 2 cups of strong tea, and the crown prince would frown repeatedly. The marquis would arrive to test their lessons and finish the tea the crown prince refused to drink. The crown prince would complain that we were ruining good tea. Princess Seraphina would argue that the stronger the tea, the richer its fragrance. They would quarrel until their faces flushed red. The marquis would laugh as he listened, then declare, "No more tea. Let us drink wine instead." I thought, if I brewed tea for the crown prince now, he would drink it without complaint. He even sent many fine teas as gifts. I remembered what royal physician Malcolm Gray once asked me, "Have you guessed who truly stands behind the commands?" Suddenly, I lowered my voice and called softly, "My lady." She looked at me. "What is it?" I shook my head. The good days of Princess Seraphina Vale ended completely during the autumn hunt. After the season turned, I fell ill with a lingering cold that would not heal. She ordered me to remain at the princess's manor to recover, while she took several officials and guards to hunt. Helpless, miserable, and filled with regret, I shut myself inside my room in frustration. When the princess's manor was formally opened, aside from appointing various officials such as the chief administrative officer, the empress also bestowed upon Princess Seraphina a senior female officer surnamed Zhao to manage internal affairs. Everyone in the manor called her Aunt Zhao. Aunt Zhao was strict and disciplined, training clever and well-mannered maids. In the days before ascension, many of Princess Seraphina's former attendants had scattered. Thus, though I felt uneasy, I could only allow Aunt Zhao to select new attendants for her and oversee all internal matters. The courtyard was now filled with capable, quick-witted servants, far more alert and polished than when I first entered service, yet I still found them immature. I could not feel at ease leaving them to accompany her. Aunt Zhao did not speak much. She only told me to recover properly. Princess Seraphina joked that she would hunt a white rabbit for me to keep as a pet, but instead, she was carried back on a litter, and with her came an imperial decree of reprimand. The emperor ordered that she be confined to reflect upon her conduct, and that she receive 30 strokes of the rod. None of us knew what had happened. Aunt Zhao entered the palace to see the empress. When she returned, she said nothing, only instructed me to care for Princess Seraphina properly. When Princess Seraphina recovered, her temperament had changed. She read less. During the day she drank wine. She summoned Xingxi to sing. Even when her second brother came to visit, she drove him away. Aunt Zhao often paced outside the door, looking as though she wished to speak. But holding back, I sat at the doorway. Snow had begun to fall from the sky. Inside, I heard Xingxi singing sorrowful songs. Suddenly, I hated him, as ministers once hated the music that ruined tyrants. As courtiers blamed favored concubines for the downfall of kings, I hated Xingxi. I hated the softness of his voice, as though, without that languid, clinging music, none of this would have happened. Princess Seraphina Vale was meant to return as a brilliant general. She had a father and brothers who adored her beyond measure. She possessed exceptional martial skill. She had talent that compelled admiration. She should have been a figure dazzling beyond compare, but the princess now had lost her spirit. She still read books, she still drank strong tea, she still sent me out to deliver letters, she still handled the official documents sent from the government offices, yet she was no longer the princess she once had been. Days passed in this way. After she was pardoned from confinement, she often went hunting again, riding far beyond the city. But she rarely visited Master Mai. She listened to music frequently and even summoned entire troops to perform song and dance. Aunt Zhao would glance at her gently and tell me to instruct the kitchen to prepare calming broths. Whether those broths calmed the spirit or not, I could not tell. The lamp in her chamber rarely burned through the night now. Yet her spirit only worsened. At times she would lie in bed sleeping even during the day. The treasured blade bestowed upon her by the emperor, the azure guardian saber, had been lost during the autumn hunt. She had another forged and held it in her arms each night as she slept. When she slept, no one was permitted inside her chamber. Not even I was allowed to remain. When Yong'an's city began to grow hot with early summer, Princess Seraphina was accused before the imperial court. Soon after, she was arrested and escorted to the heavenly prison. I panicked, not knowing what to do. I wanted to enter the palace and beg the empress for mercy, but Aunt Zhao stopped me. She asked me quietly, "Does the princess have any path of retreat?" I knew nothing. Princess Seraphina never discussed court affairs with anyone. The estates and manors were managed by stewards. The people I associated with were mostly lowly servants. Even Lan Xiao, so exceedingly clever, had followed Master Mai to the western regions. Now that disaster had fallen upon the princess, I truly had no path left. I asked Aunt Zhao, "Is her crime grave?" She sighed. "Ill fortune outweighs good." I fell to my knees before her. "You serve close to the mother of the nation. Please, show me a way. If Her Highness has no road to survival, I can go in her stead. I am willing to die for her." Aunt Zhao looked at me steadily. "What do you still possess?" I answered, "This servant has long followed Her Highness and received many rewards." I have converted most of it into coin and purchased a small parcel of land outside the capital. Only then did Aunt Zhao begin to instruct me. She told me where to send letters, which offices to approach, what matters to handle, what words to say. She said, "From this day forth, those properties must no longer bear any connection to the princess's manor. If Her Highness is fortunate enough to escape death, she will likely be reduced to commoner status. You must take her there. At least there will be some property to sustain her. After enduring a few bitter years, she will still be a princess at heart." My hands trembled without cease. All I could do was prepare bedding and provisions according to Aunt Zhao's instructions. Before parting, Aunt Zhao clasped my hands and remained silent for a long time. Princess Seraphina truly was someone favored by fate. She was not executed, nor was she formally stripped of her lineage. She was merely dismissed from office and exiled to Lingzhou. I heard that Lingzhou was distant and damp, thick with miasma. The people there were fierce and poorly governed. To be exiled there, how could it compare to being reduced to a commoner yet remaining in the capital? In the capital, after all, one lived beneath the sun of heaven. Even if reduced to common status, she still carried imperial blood. She would not starve nor freeze. Proximity, over time, meant the emperor would not forget her. But Lingzhou, so far and perilous, how could she ever return to the capital once sent there? Yet Princess Seraphina had no wish to struggle for position in the capital. She returned to the manor, packed her belongings, and prepared to depart. I busied myself arranging luggage, but she refused to take me. She even intended to marry me off. "I have selected several households for you," she said calmly. "Choose one you favor and marry. Do not follow me." I could not bear to leave her. I wept every day. At last, annoyed beyond endurance, she began going out without bringing me along. Aunt Zhao tried to persuade me patiently. "The princess is benevolent," she said. "The men she has chosen for you are of good appearance and character. Their families are wealthy, with few members. Once you marry in, you will become mistress of the household. The princess will grant you a generous dowry to honor you. What more could you want? Even daughters of noble families do no better. Though you are a lady officer, you cannot earn merit like a man. Your service has only ever been attending another. If you marry, you will never lack food or clothing. Husband and wife in harmony, servants attending you, would that not be like living as an immortal? Why are you still dissatisfied?" I had no words to refute her. She summoned my former companions to persuade me. Fu Er had married a company commander under the princess and lived in marital harmony. Dan Yun had wed a scholar and was equally content. They both urged me to agree. Bue, who had been selected by the Empress Zhao to serve in the central palace, even obtained permission to meet me and offer counsel, though she herself was still unmarried. The only person who might have helped me, Lan Xiao, had cleared her past offenses, helped manage the princess's lands and shops, and then departed with Master Mai to the western regions. Their voices filled my ears until my head ached. At last I simply covered my ears and refused to listen. I insisted on following the princess to Lingzhou, even on the day before departure, would not relent. Seeing my stubborn resolve, Princess Seraphina merely sighed and allowed me to accompany her. There was another who followed us. Qingxi. He walked the entire 30 li on foot, carrying his pipa in his arms. In the end, the princess permitted him to come as well. The road to Lingzhou was long. Along the way, we admired the changing landscapes, rolling hills, winding rivers, endless skies washed in pale gold at dusk. Her Highness spoke little, yet she smiled more than before. Though she had been stripped of her rank, officials still came to pay their respects as we passed through various prefectures. Their words were measured and courteous, their tones filled with unmistakable reverence. Whenever we paused to rest, some would recount tales of her valiant exploits in the army, stories of fearless charges and brilliant strategies that once shook the battlefield. We encountered bandits on the road as well. Princess Seraphina Vale had not been stripped of her title entirely, and Lingzhou was a wild and untamed land. The emperor permitted her to bring 300 men for protection. She showed no mercy to the bandits, yet bandits, too, were victims of a cruel age. In the final years of the previous reign, Emperor Reginald Ashford had ruled with brutality. The people suffered under crushing taxes and endless forced labor. To escape impossible levies, many fled into the deep mountains, living among tigers and wolves. Over time, they gathered into outlaw bands. Though a new dynasty now stood, they did not dare descend the mountains, fearing execution. With no path back to ordinary life, they continued to rob and harm others. Princess Seraphina executed those whose crimes were beyond forgiveness. The rest she handed to the local authorities to be registered and investigated. Then she asked them, who among them would be willing to follow her to Lingzhou. Those willing would be enrolled into military households, receive stipends, and upon arrival in Lingzhou, be granted land, homes, and wives. They trembled. She did not force them. She distributed silver and ordered her men to help them pack their belongings. At the sight of the money, many willingly chose to follow her. The farther south we traveled, the harsher the road became. On the second day after arriving in Lingzhou, Princess Seraphina fell ill. It was hardly surprising. Lingzhou was damp and oppressive. Clothes would not dry after washing. Wet firewood would not burn for cooking. When I prepared her bed, I found a centipede 3 inches long writhing within the bedding. After driving it away, I could not help but feel a surge of grievance in my heart. Hardship in the army was one thing. But now, she was the emperor's beloved daughter. Once cherished and adorned with favor, yet she had to endure such suffering here. A noble princess reduced to this, poor food, no proper medicine when ill. The more I thought, the heavier my heart became. I tried not to let anyone see, yet tears fell silently, one by one. She lit a lamp and, fighting through her fever, continued reviewing official documents. Seeing me like that, she said calmly, "If you are tired, then rest. No matter what, we must live through each day." Yes. Each day still had to be lived. She drank bitter medicine daily, frowning at the taste, yet her strength gradually returned. I followed the local villagers to gather herbs and learned how to repel insects. I even raised 2 cats to catch mice. Princess Seraphina spent her own funds recruiting craftsmen and worked with local officials to repair the residence. The people who had followed her were registered, given land, and threw themselves into farming. After some time, even amid hardship, life began to show signs of hope. She once told me that Lingzhou might very well be where she would spend the latter half of her life. So I worked even harder to make this place livable. It could never compare to the splendor and luxury of the princess's manor in the capital, but I was determined to make her as comfortable as possible. I planted bamboo and trees in the courtyard, dug a deeper well, discarded the wooden furnishings that rotted in the damp and had bamboo ones crafted instead. Whenever I seemed idle, she would send me to follow young Master Bai. Young Master Bai was the youngest disciple of Master Bai. Orphaned, he had been taken in and raised by Master Bai. Before the exile to Lingzhou, Master Bai had wished to accompany the princess, but she refused, telling him to remain at the estates of the princess's manor and enjoy his old age. With no other choice, he sent his youngest disciple in his stead to assist her. Lingzhou had few physicians. Though I had been the dullest and most scolded student under Master Bai, here I had become unexpectedly important. Young Master Bai sighed and said to me, "Elder sister, it is already difficult for women to seek medical treatment. With the barriers between men and women, there are matters they cannot speak openly. If you are willing, study more about women's illnesses." He handed me many books and told me to study them before accompanying him on house calls, and so I buried myself in reading every day, so absorbed that when Mira called my name, I would not hear her. Qingxi was a good child, beautiful in appearance, gifted with a voice like flowing water. When Princess Seraphina had leisure, she would summon him to sing. But now her moments of leisure were few, so she allowed him to move freely, no longer bound to constant attendance. Qingxi grew far more at ease. After wandering through Lingzhou's landscapes, he composed several new songs. When he played the pipa and sang, even birds seemed to forget to flap their wings, dropping to the ground to listen. His audience would fall into rapture. Later, he taught these new songs to others. When the villagers returned home from laboring in the fields, he would sing for them. His voice was clear, his melodies gentle. After listening, their exhaustion seemed to dissolve. Some villagers invited Qingxi to remain with them long term. He sought Princess Seraphina's permission. She assigned 2 men to accompany him and told him he was free to go as he pleased. I teased her, saying she worried too much about Qingxi. She merely smiled and ignored me. Yet for some reason, an unfamiliar feeling stirred in my heart. I suddenly remembered the words of Crown Prince Lucian Ashford when we left the capital. On the day Princess Seraphina departed, the Crown Prince came to see her off. He told her not to resent him. I had long suspected that the hardships she endured at the frontier were somehow connected to the Crown Prince. But seeing how much pain she already bore, I dared not ask further. Later, observing that she appeared outwardly calm, I forced myself to set the matter aside. But now, she had sent men to accompany Qingxi on his travels. Was it truly out of affection and concern for him, or was it to keep watch over him? Qingxi yearned for her favor. Yet she only ever summoned him to sing. She had never once shown him intimate affection. I had always assumed he simply wished to cling to her for protection. But if that were the case, why would he willingly follow Her Highness to distant Lingzhou? In this world, how many people remain without leaving, without abandoning, without turning back? Was Qingxi truly just a performer who had fled from a traveling troupe? I did not know whether my suspicions were right. I only knew that he had indeed roamed throughout Lingzhou, composing many new melodies. When he returned, he took on students and performed those new compositions for Princess Seraphina Vale, receiving rewards for his efforts. Time passed, slowly, and yet swiftly. Her Highness trained soldiers, ordered canals to be built, developed pottery production, recruited craftsmen, taught the people of Lingzhou to make paper and weave cloth, and established schools. By then, my own medical skills had improved somewhat. I was instructed to accept several female apprentices and teach them how to treat women's illnesses. Years of hardship were concealed within a few simple lines. She worked so tirelessly that strands of silver appeared in her hair. When I looked into the mirror, I saw that I, too, had aged. But time never pauses for anyone. Qingxi still called her Your Highness, and called me elder sister. He never took a wife. With tender, affectionate eyes, he would gaze at her. Whenever I had the chance, I kept watch over him, searching for flaws. Under my constant scrutiny, he grew uneasy and restless. He tried to complain to Her Highness, but whenever he attempted to raise the matter, she either lacked the patience to listen, or simply did not wish to hear it. many years passed. I eventually grew accustomed to Lingzhou's oppressive heat. When we first arrived, I could barely eat and grew thin. Now that my appetite had returned, we were preparing to leave. In the spring of the 15th year of Jingming, the Crown Prince Lucian Ashford rebelled. Her Highness was at the Yamen handing over administrative matters, rearranging officials, inspecting troop numbers, summoning commanders. I hurried back to our residence to pack. This time, she had received a secret imperial decree ordering her to return to the capital to provide reinforcement. A secret edict meant immediate departure, swift, silent, unseen. I left behind all the belongings we had accumulated over the years, bringing only the items she was accustomed to using. Qingxi sat beneath the corridor, hugging his pipa, staring blankly at me. Only when I finished packing and was about to leave to find Her Highness did he finally speak. "Elder sister. Is Your Highness not taking me?" I turned to look at him. He was still as beautiful as ever. Those tender, affectionate eyes. When one looked into them, one felt compelled to lay every good thing in the world before him. Just to see him smile brightly, I looked at this beautiful man, a bewitching calamity, a sentimental wandering singer, a useless fool. He had been brought before Her Highness by General Victor Rowan. I had personally escorted him into the princess's residence. The robe he wore, I had sewn it with my own hands. I said to him, "For the rest of your life, you are not to leave Lingzhou by even half a step. If you dare to leave, the day you enter the capital will be the day you die." I am not clever. But I will never betray Her Highness. He was not clever either. Yet he wished to be loyal to the master behind him. He longed for Princess Seraphina's favor, her affection, perhaps even her love. He could not abandon the one who commanded him from the shadows. Yet he also did not wish harm to befall Her Highness. Qingxi knew I suspected him. He knew I watched him constantly. If he could escape my surveillance, he could speak to others, share things that only someone close to Her Highness would know. Did I suspect him? Yes. Did Her Highness not suspect him as well? Could he truly have transmitted anything vital? So I told him, "Stay, the courtyard will remain for you. Within it are blue stone paths, trees, bamboo, a deep well. There is the kite Her Highness painted herself. There are copied music scores borrowed by your students. There is the desk where she practiced calligraphy. There are bamboo furnishings. Fruit chilled in well water. Inside the courtyard are your instrument strings. Outside it stretches the vast blue sky. Lingzhou is remote, but it is enough for you to live out your life." My heart is soft. If Qingxi was truly a spy, I should have asked Her Highness to cut him into 100 pieces. Yet he lived. I did not want him to continue down a mistaken path. I cherished his gentle beauty. But no one must ever become an obstacle to Her Highness's grand design. If anything were to happen to her, I would kill him with my own hands. Princess Seraphina, bearing the secret edict, assembled her forces and marched toward the capital. When we departed, the people of Lingzhou gathered to see her off. She gazed silently at the citizens. Then she bowed to them. Afterward, she mounted her horse and rode away. I followed with the troops. I turned once to look at Qingxi. For reasons I could not explain, my heart ached sharply. I swallowed my tears, turned back, and rode on. Though doubts lingered in my heart, we had lived together for years. He was beautiful, gentle in temperament, skilled with the pipa, and had helped me often. If he had been clean, if he had been innocent, I would have gladly regarded him as a younger brother, but he was not. Her Highness never spoke these things to me, yet I could always guess her thoughts. Behind Qingxi stood another master. I did not know what he had done all these years. But I knew this, for the rest of his life. He would never see me again. This farewell meant he would remain in Lingzhou until the end of his days, never permitted to enter the capital. If he disobeyed, the day he entered the capital would be the day he died. Bearing the imperial decree, Princess Seraphina returned to the capital to provide aid. Along the way, she executed obstructing officials. Before advancing further, she detoured through Yunchuan to pay respects to her mother. Her mother had been the late Duchess of the Marquisate of Virtuous Clarity, Lady Helena Vale. Among the common people, she was widely praised. They spoke of her beauty, her virtue, her gentleness. She had been born into poverty. She was the woman who had stood beside the Marquis through his hardest years, enduring hardship and obscurity. She bore him 2 sons and 1 daughter. The eldest son, even in his youth, was known for his virtue and talent. Later, he was appointed Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace, Crown Prince Lucian Ashford. The eldest daughter was Princess Seraphina Vale of Qin, who spent half her life on the battlefield, earning brilliant military merit. The younger son, Prince Zhonghua of the Commandery, married a daughter of the former imperial clan. His reputation was modest, not particularly distinguished, with such accomplished children, though Her Majesty had never enjoyed the splendor of the central palace during her lifetime. After her death she continued to receive abundant offerings. The incense before her spirit tablet never ceased. Among scholarly families, she was held up as a model of womanly virtue, her name recorded in books to instruct daughters within their households. And yet, contrary to the reverence she received among the common people, within the palace she was rarely mentioned. Aside from the emperor and the Eastern Palace composing memorial texts in her honor, others seemed to have forgotten her entirely. Even her own flesh and blood daughter, for more than a decade, had done nothing beyond observing the proper rites. Even the memorial writings were drafted by retainers. In Yunchuan, the maternal clan received Her Highness with the utmost respect. Though the man presiding over the household was merely her maternal uncle, the late Lady Helena Vale, first wife of the Marquis, had, after the emperor ascended the throne, been posthumously honored as Empress Deming. Her spirit tablet was placed in a position of dignity, worshipped with solemn ceremony. The First Lady's passing was a grief that could not be spoken aloud within the Marquisate, a taboo within the imperial palace. The emperor was passionate by nature. His harem was filled with beauties like clouds in the sky. Yet only the eldest son and eldest daughter, both born of Lady Helena Vale, were truly cherished. On the night before Funi was married, she and I lay beneath the covers whispering. Only then did she dare to speak something that bordered on impropriety. Funi believed that the emperor had loved the late empress with a devotion worthy of romantic tales. But when I looked at Princess Seraphina standing in the ancestral hall, she had once knelt before her mother's spirit tablet. Now, she did not even lower her head. For reasons I could not explain, tears suddenly fell from my eyes. My own mother had never loved me. She sold me to a crone for 2 strings of copper coins. Did Lady Helena Vale love her daughter? Are mothers meant to love the children they bear? Let it go. Princess Seraphina said, she had endured for 10 years. 10 years of neglect. 10 years of bitterness. 10 years of fury. All the oppression, all the resentment. At last they had sharpened into a blade, its tip aimed directly at Yong'an, the imperial capital. She seldom smiled. But when she did, it was unrestrained and exhilarating, like when she rode into battle in her youth, like when she gazed upon the green rice fields of Lingzhou. Now she looked toward the vast dominion of the Great Liang. The imperial surname of Great Liang was Ashford, the Marquis, Princess Seraphina Vale. On the road, like a child shielding a secret, the second young master slipped out of the city and delivered the tiger Tally into Her Highness's hands. He remained gloomy, avoiding people's eyes, not daring to look at anyone. "His Highness the Crown Prince has gone mad," he said. Upon the city wall, someone had been impaled. It was Qingxi. "The years have dimmed my sight. Things too far away I cannot see clearly." But I knew it was him. He had possessed a dazzling beauty. He could play the most soul-stirring melodies in the world. Before we left Lingzhou, he had not asked to come with us. He had only played one deeply moving piece. Then he smashed the pipa that had accompanied him for so many years. Princess Seraphina left him that small courtyard, under the setting sun. He bowed in farewell. None of us saw his face clearly. Before we departed, I had made 2 sets of clothing for him. He said he would wear them during the new year. Now he wore the finest one, yet the fabric was heavy, the cutout dated. I thought, should have reinforced the stitching. The city gates were breached. Her Highness did not look at Qingxi even once. I prepared his body for burial. A thin coffin, a barren grave. I burned a great, so very great, amount of paper money for him. After returning, I thought about it for a long time. Then I purchased an extremely expensive pipa and burned it for him as well. This wasteland has mountains and rivers, grass and trees, wild beasts, and people. Here lies buried a master of the pipa. He could play the tender folk songs of Jiangnan. He could also play heroic drinking songs filled with bold spirit. When he performed, many girls would look at him. The bold ones offered him flowers. The shy ones lowered their heads and dared not speak. He could not read. Everything he knew, he learned from opera scripts. But fortunately, he had an excellent memory. He could memorize entire plays. When drunk, he would hum and sing them. He once said, "Ah man, elder sister. Lingzhou truly is a wonderful place." I knew there had always been another master behind him, and he had remained loyal to that master. He knew that I knew his identity. He did not wish to turn back. "Foolish child," the laborer I hired asked, "Madam, who is buried here?" I sighed. "Someone I once knew." The laborer scratched his head. "This isn't a good place. There's no human warmth here." "He committed a great crime," I replied. "So he is buried here as punishment." She had been born into poverty. She was the woman who had stood beside the Marquis through the hardest of years, enduring storm and hardship at his side. She bore him 2 sons and 1 daughter. The eldest son, even in his youth, was known for his virtue. In time, he was invested as Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace, Crown Prince Lucian Ashford. The eldest daughter was Princess Seraphina Vale of Qin. She spent half her life on campaign, earning illustrious merit upon the battlefield. The younger son, Prince Zhanghua of the Commandery, married a daughter of the former imperial clan. His reputation was modest, not particularly distinguished. With such exceptional children, though Her Majesty had never enjoyed the splendor of the central palace in her lifetime, after her death she was worshipped without cease. The incense before her spirit tablet burned in abundance among scholarly households. She was revered as a model of womanhood, her name recorded in books to instruct daughters within the inner chambers. And yet, unlike the reverence she received among the people, within the palace she was seldom mentioned. Aside from the emperor and the Eastern Palace composing memorial essays for the late empress, others seemed to have forgotten her entirely. Even her own flesh and blood daughter, for more than 10 years, had done nothing beyond observing the required rites. Even the memorial texts were written on behalf of the clan by retainers. In Yinchuan, the clan received Princess Seraphina Vale with the utmost respect. Though the man presiding there was merely her maternal uncle, Lady Helena Vale, the first wife of the Marquis, had, after the emperor ascended the throne, been posthumously honored as Empress Deming. Her spirit tablet was placed in solemn dignity upon the altar, worshipped with ceremony. The First Lady's death was an unspoken grief within the Marquisate, a taboo within the imperial palace. The emperor was a man of passion. His harem was filled with beauties like clouds in the sky. Yet only the eldest son and eldest daughter, both born of Lady Helena Vale, were truly cherished. On the night before Funi was married, I lay beneath the covers whispering with her. Only then did she dare to cross propriety with a single question. She believed the emperor had loved the late empress with a devotion as deep as those told in romantic tales. But when I saw Princess Seraphina standing in the ancestral hall, she had once knelt before her mother's spirit tablet. Now, she did not even lower her head. For reasons I could not understand, tears suddenly fell from my eyes. My own mother had never loved me. She sold me to an old crone for 2 strings of copper coins. Did Lady Helena Vale love her daughter? Are mothers meant to bear children in order to love them? Enough, Princess Seraphina Vale said quietly. She had endured for 10 years. 10 years of cold neglect. 10 years of bitterness. 10 years of fury. All the oppression, all the grievances. At last they sharpened into a blade, its point aimed directly at Yongan, the imperial capital. She seldom smiled. But when she did, it was open and unrestrained, like when she rode to war in her youth, like when she gazed upon the green rice fields of Lingzhou. Now she looked toward the vast dominion of Great Liang. The imperial surname of Great Liang was Ashford, the Marquis, Princess Seraphina Vale. On the road, as if shielding something precious, the second young master slipped out of the city and delivered the tiger Tally into her hands. He remained gloomy, avoiding people's eyes, not daring to meet anyone's gaze. His Highness the Crown Prince has gone mad, he said. Upon the city wall, someone had been impaled. It was Qingxi. The years have dimmed my sight. Things too distant I cannot see clearly, but I recognized him. He possessed a beauty dazzling beyond measure. He could coax from his pipa the most soul-stirring melodies in the world. Before leaving, he did not ask Princess Seraphina Vale whether he might follow. He only played one heartbreaking piece. Then he smashed the pipa that had accompanied him for many years. She left that small courtyard to him. Under the glow of the setting sun, he bowed toward us. None of us saw his face clearly. Before departing, I had made 2 sets of clothing for Qingxi. He said he would wear them during the new year. Now he wore the finest one. But the fabric was heavy, the cut unfashionable. I thought, should have reinforced the seams. The city gates were broken. Princess Seraphina Vale did not look at Qingxi even once. I prepared his body for burial. A thin coffin, a barren grave. I burned in abundance. So much. Paper money for him. After returning, I pondered for a long time. Then I bought a very expensive pipa and burned it for him as well. This desolate land has mountains and rivers, grasses and trees, wild beasts, and people. Here lies buried a master of the pipa. He could play the gentle folk songs of Jiangnan. He could play bold drinking songs filled with heroic spirit. When he played, many girls watched him. The bold ones offered him flowers. The shy ones lowered their heads, too timid to speak. He could not read. Everything he knew, he learned from opera. Yet he had a good memory and could recite entire plays. When drunk, he would hum them softly. He once said, "Amanjia. Lingzhou truly is a wonderful place." He once said, "Amanjia. Lingzhou truly is a wonderful place." I knew there had always been another master behind him, and he had remained loyal to that master. He knew that I knew his identity. He did not wish to turn back. Foolish child. The laborer I hired asked, "Madam, who is buried here?" I sighed. "Someone I once knew." The laborer scratched his head. This is not a good place. There's no human warmth here. He committed a grave crime, I replied. So he is buried here as punishment. Her adoptive parents had raised her with tenderness and care. They could not bear to see her become a servant, nor could they bear to send her into the tiger's den that was the Marquis residence. She was gravely ill. Yet all at once, she burst forth with a terrifying surge of strength. She rolled off the bed, dragged the frail little girl beside it over, and said to me, "In the past, I treated sister poorly. However you wish to deal with me, beat me, curse me, strangle me, take my life, I deserve it. But Sister Aman, please, take this child away. She is my daughter. Sister Jin Xiao, take her away." Jin Xiao was shoved forward in confusion, then forced to her knees by Xinghua. Her forehead struck the ground again and again, soon turning red and swollen. Xinghua said, "Sister, treat this child as if she were a part of me. As long as you do not sell her into a brothel, anything else is fine. I am about to die. Do not let my daughter remain here." Jin Xiao's hair was yellow and sparse, her arms thin as firewood. There was hardly any flesh on her face, she looked shriveled and malnourished. I said nothing. I simply took Jin Xiao's hand and led her away. She cried and struggled, unwilling to leave. Xinghua slapped her twice. I did not help them. I owed no debt. On the third day, however, the moneylender came with news that Xinghua had died of illness. I gave 2 taels of silver to arrange the funeral. It was conducted properly and with dignity. Her husband was not permitted to appear at the burial. I had someone send him to prison. He had once been a diligent man, with a dozen acres of land. But he fell into gambling, squandered the family fortune, and reduced himself to ruin. He knew a bit of carpentry, worked as a hired laborer, later as a tenant farmer. Yet what he earned was never enough for drink and dice. When drunk and defeated at the tables, he beat his wife and child. Now that Xinghua was dead, he would not live in peace either. Mira came to burn incense. She said, "Back then, when you buried Xiao Qiao, she told me that one day she wanted you to bury her too." I looked at Jin Xiao, who was crying so pitifully, and remained silent. I had once thought of keeping Jin Xiao by my side. But the truth was, I could not bring myself to feel affection for the child. So I entrusted her to Mira. Mira taught her embroidery and reading. After the new year, when I saw her again, she had grown fairer, stronger, no longer that withered little thing. Later, when Princess Seraphina Vale ascended the throne, I became a female official in the palace. Before the emperor, I would never again speak of loyalty to the sovereign. Such loyalty was merely rhetoric for the common people. Once the people heard it, they would not resist. The emperor could then reign for generations untold, but Princess Seraphina Vale had long since ceased to be a loyal subject. She was a power holder whose achievements would be recorded in history, who grasped authority in her own hands. She either became emperor, or she died. She did not wish to die, therefore, she could only become emperor. She would forever be loyal only to herself. Life in the palace did not differ much from before. Only now, more people sought to approach me. They sent gold, silver, jade, hoping I would speak a few favorable words before Her Majesty. I refused them all, and reported everything to Princess Seraphina Vale. She showed a trace of regret at the lost gold and silver, saying lightly, "You could have accepted it." Yet cold sweat dampened my back. After so many years, at least I still remembered what Aunt Xiao had taught me. No matter how deep affection runs, it will one day fade. And I had never been the only one. Mira could embroider, Lanxiao had a talent for trade, Dan Yun and Bai Yu were breathtakingly beautiful, making beds, pouring tea, preparing meals. Any woman could perform such tasks. Now that Princess Seraphina Vale was emperor, I could not afford the slightest mistake, otherwise, even if she wished to protect me, I would not meet a good end. All matters of the harem were nominally overseen by Empress Dowager Catherine. But she was advanced in age and lacked the strength, so Her Majesty established female officials to manage the palace affairs. Jin Shao grew up and married the steward of a cloth shop. Her husband's family was well off, and he was gentle by nature. I added dowry ornaments for her and personally saw her off when she wed. Mira now had faint lines at the corners of her eyes. Smiling, she said, "Looking at Jin Shao reminds me of us when we first entered the Marquis residence. Back then, you were still called Manzi. The matchmaker gave you the name Tao Hua. Later, His Majesty named you Amon." I laughed softly. Amon is a good name. Mira sighed. We were both born with bitter fates. But all the good fortune of our lives was used up the day we entered the Marquis household to serve His Majesty. Now, these are peaceful days. I said to her, "Tomorrow, come with me to the palace." To pay respects to Her Majesty? She asked. Several years ago, Mira had embroidered a formation-breaking map that won praise from Emperor Reginald Ashford. She was summoned into the palace to serve with her needlework. After Princess Seraphina Vale ascended the throne, she was granted amnesty and allowed to return home to reunite with her family. Now she taught embroidery to the daughters of noble households in the capital. I said, "Aunt Chu once had a daughter who was sold as a child bride. She has now been found. Let us go see her." Mira was startled at first, then overjoyed. Then Aunt Chu can finally close her eyes in peace beneath the yellow springs. That night, I stayed at Myra's house. The next morning, we entered the palace together. Aunt Chu's daughter had married into the Zhang family. She held no great reputation. The neighbors simply called her Madame Zhang. Madame Zhang was older than we were. Half her hair had already turned white. There was something of Aunt Chu in her features. Princess Seraphina Vale asked her what she desired. A promise from the Son of Heaven must be kept. I was afraid Madame Zhang did not understand the weight of such a promise. I feared she might ask too much and place Her Majesty in a difficult position. If Madame Zhang asked for nothing, would her descendants remain obscure for generations? But if she demanded too much, was Her Majesty to step over rows of meritorious ministers and veteran officials to grant her favor? Madame Zhang pondered for a long while before speaking. "This commoner does not dare to hope for any honor for my late mother in having once served Your Majesty. That was her blessing. I was sold away as a child. I ought not to claim her merit as my own." Princess Seraphina Vale asked. "If we insist on granting you a reward, then what?" Madame Zhang lowered her head and kowtowed deeply. "This commoner humbly asks that Your Majesty grant my son the opportunity to sit for the imperial examinations." "Only that?" The emperor asked. "Yes. My husband's family belongs to the artisan class. For generations, we have been craftsmen. But my son loves to read. He has ambition. Yet because we are registered as artisans, he is barred from the examinations. I beg Your Majesty to allow my son the right to compete." Princess Seraphina Vale fell silent for a long time. Then she said, "Granted." I studied Madame Zhang. Her words did not sound like those of an ordinary woman. She had been born into poverty, her husband's family were craftsmen. How could she possess such foresight? Madame Zhang seemed to read my thoughts. In the past, I too was a woman who quarreled over trifles, who fought bitterly over scraps because our household was poor. But thanks to your Majesty's grace, our business has prospered year by year. I listened to my son read his books. I listened to him explain the classics. Without realizing it, my heart began to understand. I am no longer as I once was. I escorted her home. Her Majesty bestowed gold, silver, and bolts of fine cloth. My sisters and I added further gifts in gratitude for Aunt Chu's kindness. During that time, I used my position as female official before the throne to arrange matters discreetly, shielding the Zhang family from jealousy and interference. In time, the Zhangs flourished and became a prominent local clan. Later, Princess Serafina Vale reformed the artisan system, permitting the children of craftsmen to study and sit for the examinations. 3 years afterward, she abolished the hereditary artisan registry entirely, allowing free movement, permitting skills to be taught beyond bloodlines, no longer forcing craft upon one's descendants. She frequently employed artisans within the palace and increased their stipends and rewards. There was not a single craftsman who did not feel gratitude toward her, yet Her Majesty's health declined steadily. She was extraordinary, truly. First years of warfare, then demotion and recall to the capital, then endless immersion in memorials and state affairs. She never cared for her own preservation. Strong wine, bitter tea, rich meats. Martial practice and hunting. In youth, her vitality had seemed inexhaustible, but age spares no one. I forbade strong tea and spirits. I decocted medicines, adjusted her meals, even mixed medicinal herbs into the incense burner. Still, I could not fend off the ache in her bones when rain fell, nor the cough that echoed through the night. Sometimes, after deliberations, her ministers left the hall with tears in their eyes. Time is more merciless than any emperor, the wisest sovereign in the world, together with the most loyal and brilliant ministers, had forged this flourishing age. Yet even such splendor could not purchase a shred of mercy from heaven. How I hated the white in her hair, hated the darkness of night, hated the rain. I wanted no withered branch to appear within the palace walls. I wanted no lamp to burn down to its final flicker, but I could not contend with time. I could not hold back her departing steps. I ought to be grateful. From birth until death, she had never known utter defeat. In the annals of history, even the most gifted emperors often lapsed into confusion before their passing, leaving a stain upon a lifetime of merit. But she remained clear-minded. She guided young Lord Adrian Ashford to become a worthy heir, left him a clean administration, a full treasury, loyal officials. She sat within the hall, wrapped in a thick foxfur cloak. Outside, snow fell in hushed abundance. Inside, it was warm as spring. Calmly, she entrusted her final instructions. I turned my back and sat upon the threshold. My tears seeped into the carved patterns of the stone beneath my feet. When she had finished, she bade her ministers withdraw. None wished to go, none dared to leave. Each feared that the moment they turned their backs, they would never again behold their sovereign. She smiled. Do not wear such faces. This year's auspicious snow promises a bountiful harvest next year. If affairs are light at year's end, we shall go hunting together. If we bring down a tiger, that would be true fortune. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.